Spreadsheets, clunky software, 100 different logins just to run your business? Ah.
There's a better way. Odoo. One simple, connected platform that handles sales, inventory, accounting, and more. So you can focus on growing, not juggling. Make the switch today at odoo.com. That's ODOO.com.
You know what it is. That's right. It's time to talk money with your money nerd and financial coach. Now, tighten those purse strings and open those ears. It's the Money Talk with Tiff podcast.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Money Talk with Tiff. I am Tiffany Grant, and today I have one of my good friends, Aquania Escarne, on the line, and she is my life insurance agent. And I wanted to bring her on here because in 2019, we talked about the basics. So if her voice sounds familiar when she starts talking, she was on episode 18, which was in 2019, so many years ago. But today I wanted to talk about what personally happened to me lately. And that is one day, Aquania reached out to me and she said, Tiffany, your policy lapsed. And first I was like, oh gosh, what did I do? What happened? And I had the coverage, but an ACH error. And then now we're learning a residency complication just changed everything. So Aquania, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me. And woo, girl, the transparency. I love it. Yes. And that's exactly what I want to dive into, because I want people to understand that not everybody's perfect. And my insurance lapsed sometime, just like everybody else's. So with that being said, what was your first thought when you saw that my policy was lapsed? So I guess just back up a little bit in that I reached out prior, but we had a conversation and you were like, oh, I called them, everything is fine. So warning number one, even if you talk to someone, you have to trust but verify, right? Like, we had an opportunity, but we didn't know that we needed to do this, to call and just be like, hey, you guys forgot to take your money. Because you reached out to them, I reached out to them. They did not take their money. There was this form. It was just like paperwork that they wanted done that never came from them. So you never could take your action. And then we just move on with our lives and think things are done. So I was shocked because I was like, I swear we looked into this and we resolved it. But after deeper investigation, we realized that because the payment wasn't made, and payment is what drives everything, right? If you're paying for the policy according to your contract, then they will cover you, right? And since the payment process had a disruption, they did what they do, which is they canceled the policy. But that was a good learning experience for you because it led us to the door of reinstatement. So some people assume that because I had a policy and I missed a payment, and maybe even the grace period for the payment, because normally you get 30 days after a missed payment for term insurance to make a payment and still have the policy in effect as long as you become current. But what most people don't know is even beyond the 30-day grace period, they can still choose to keep your policy in place and then just have you pay what you missed out on. And there's like a time limit for that. So sometimes, it varies insurance company, but sometimes that could be 3 months or 6 months later. And it's called a reinstatement. But reinstatement is like a mini application. So, before we get to dive deeper into that, I just wanted to kind of give people hope that even if you have a mistake, even if you miss a payment, you can still pursue your policy being enforced or reinforced. And a lot of times you can even have it reinstated as long as you have the income to cover the cost for that.
That is so important to go over and bring up, because I feel like when people miss the payment, they get that cancellation letter or what have you. They're like, oh, well, there goes that. Honestly, I was feeling the same. I'm like, oh gosh, well, here we go. And then when I reached out to you, it's like, well, we can try to get it reinstated. I said, okay. Because I feel like I've been paying on it for so long. I didn't want to lose it that easily just from a paperwork error,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So with that being said, is there a right time to review your insurance, or should it be part of an annual, biannual, quarterly, monthly process?
So Tiff, that's actually a great question. And it really depends on where you are in your life, because as long as you haven't had any major life changes, such as a marriage, a divorce, the new birth of new children or adoption of new children, then you could review your life insurance policy annually. If you have a term life insurance policy, you're checking to make sure you're aware of when it expires, how much time do you have left to make any changes or modifications to the contract, and potentially turn it into a permanent insurance policy, and then being aware of when it expires. So if it is about to expire, you can do what you need to do to get another one. On the other hand, if you have a permanent life insurance policy, I recommend you check it annually so that you know how much cash it has earned, how it's performing, and also, again, have I made all my payments? Am I getting the return that I expected? And if so, am I maintaining visibility on what's happening? If you have a major life change, so you get married or you get divorced, you want to make sure you document that immediately, because obviously if you get divorced and you have left your insurance to your ex, without you changing it, they will still inherit that money upon death. And if you have more children or expand your family, you want to make sure that you've included enough coverage to cover each child. So sometimes when I meet with clients, they do put money into their life insurance policy to cover college for their children. And if you did your policy before and you only had one kid and now you have two, you may want to get more life insurance to cover the new child. So I recommend annually if not much has changed, but immediately or within a month to 3 months of the life change, if you had a major life change like a marriage, divorce, or expansion of your family.
Summer weekends are all about family, sunshine, and making memories together. Before everyone arrives, I stop at my local Total Wine & More to pick up a great bottle. Maybe a favorite we already love, or something new to enjoy with dinner on the patio. With so many bottles to choose from, it's easy to discover something amazing. And with the lowest prices, it's easy to grab an extra bottle for the table. Not sure what to pick? Their friendly guides are always there to help. Find what you love and love what you find, only at Total Wine & More. Curbside pickup and delivery available in most areas. Visit TotalWine.com to learn more. Spirits not sold in Virginia and North Carolina. Drink responsibly. Must be 21.
Emily.
Gotcha. And you just brought up a good point as well. How often should we change or review beneficiaries? Because I remember when I was working for a firm, and this lady, it was an older lady. Her husband passed away, and she had not looked at the beneficiaries in a very, 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 very long time. Well, come to find out, the beneficiaries was her sister that she didn't get along with, like as far as the trust is concerned, was her sister, and then her husband's cousin, which she hadn't talked to in forever. So then we had to track down those people so that way she could get access to her husband's life insurance policy. So with that said, how often do you recommend beneficiaries be reviewed?
Same thing. Immediately after major life changes, or annually if no major changes. Because for life insurance, it's a legally binding contract. So if you put someone's name there and you pass away and it is not who you may have intended, there's no recourse that your family can take. They can go to court, they can sue, but a judge does not even really have any grounds to overturn it, because you signed that beneficiary form in a sound body and mind, right? So unfortunately, you leave it to an ex, they're going to be spending that money on their necks, right? Because you didn't change your documentation. So that is unfortunate, but it happens all the time. And it's usually because it's the last thing that you're thinking about when you are grieving, when you are going through a divorce. What I've seen most often is people will divorce and they forget, or they remarry and they forget to add their new spouse. I've also seen situations where, because they're grieving the death of someone, they're not even thinking about the fact that they left them something valuable. And unfortunately, if you leave it to an ex-spouse who's passed away, it's supposed to go to the next person you've put. But if you haven't put a contingent beneficiary, then you will find yourself having their family inherit that fortune. Does that make sense? So if you leave it to your ex-husband or even your deceased husband, and let's say he has multiple children, some children before your marriage, for example, it's possible that his children who are not your children could be the inheritors of that money. Make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yep. That makes complete sense. And you just gave me a perfect segue, because for talking about forgetting, right? So I don't know if you remember, but back in 2022, when my grandma passed away, I called you and I'm like, Aquania, I don't know where. I know she was paying life insurance. I don't know where. I don't know how to navigate this. And you gave me some really good tips back then. So if somebody passes away in your family, how can you find out if they even had life insurance?
Yes, that's a great question. So most states have a system where life insurance policies and the beneficiaries are registered in a record. If you left a policy to a particular person, let's say you left it to your niece, nephew, sister, or brother, but then you didn't do what I recommend, which is you tell them that the policy exists, right? If you don't tell them that the policy exists so that they know who to call when something happens, they may not know to even claim this money. So what you can do is, there's a website called NAIC.org, NAIC.org. It's a organization where you can go and file a claim and say, I believe that I'm a beneficiary of a policy that belonged to my sister. Here's their name and information. And when you do this, you're going to need some things, right? So you'll need, if you have a policy, a copy of the policy. But if you don't know the policy information, you'll need to know the personal details of the insured individual. So their name, maiden name or married name, social security number, and the state where the policy was purchased. And that's important because life insurance and the laws that govern it are based on the state that the policy was purchased, and every state has different rules and laws regarding insurance. Then you will need a death certificate, because you have to prove the person is actually deceased in order to claim this money. But once you have this information and you go to the NAIC.org website, you put in the personal information in their life insurance policy locator, and you put yourself down as a potential beneficiary for this policy. They have the right to look in all the resources that they have. And then if they determine there is a match, it's called unclaimed property, unclaimed funds, then they will contact you back and confirm that you are the beneficiary of the policy and you are able to make the claim on that policy. However, I have to emphasize this. The person who submits the claim for the potential policy has to be the beneficiary. If you are not the beneficiary, and let's say your sister or brother is the beneficiary, then they won't tell you you're not the beneficiary. They'll just say unfound, like record not found. But the person who is the beneficiary has to be the one who also tries to locate the policy, because they can only tell the beneficiary of the policy that they are the beneficiary. So I hope that makes sense. So sometimes, unfortunately, if you are a group of siblings and you're not sure who the policy was left to, all of the siblings may have to submit a claim in order for the right person who was left the money to actually be notified that they were left the money.
Yep. That is very true. I know when we were going through this back in 2022, we didn't know who was the beneficiary. It was either my grandpa or my mom, or my aunt. And so everybody had to start getting on the phone and calling once I found out where the policies were. They had to be the ones to call and get the paperwork and, all of that stuff together. So, but everything you said as far as a way to look it up is definitely true. And I've used it before myself. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. Yeah. But listen, my best advice is when you get the policy, tell your beneficiaries that you got the policy. I don't know why we try to make it seem like it would be a great Hollywood story to have everyone come into the room and the will is read out loud. And that's when you learn that you are you've inherited millions of dollars from your rich uncle that you never met. That is Hollywood. The better way to do it is for rich uncles to tell everybody, look, I am leaving this to you. And here is where my important documents will be kept. And here is the person you need to contact. Unfortunately, I have lost a client. So I sell life insurance and they do die sometimes. But it is such a relief to be able to get the phone call and know exactly what to do, right? And tell that person, you don't have to worry about anything. I will take care of it, right? I just needed to know that they suddenly passed away. That is the way to do it. Give people an electronic or paper copy of your life insurance policy and make sure they're aware it exists. And I'm not saying tell your whole family, but definitely tell the beneficiaries or tell the executor of your estate so that somebody is responsible enough to communicate to the people who need to put in the paperwork to claim the money.
Gotcha. And that brings me to legacy, because what you just said, everybody gather around, let's read the rich uncle's will or what have you. That's a legacy. So how can parents use life insurance to teach their children about stewardship and legacy?
I think life insurance, it can be a family learning lesson, meaning when you decide to get the policy, you have a discussion with your children about why you got it, what you intend for the money to be used for, and what you've done to ensure that it gets to them. I'll tell you, my personal story is when I was in college, I was visiting my grandfather in New York, and he was much older man with rheumatoid arthritis, but really smart. He worked in construction, built some of the best bridges in New York. And unfortunately, later, because of the arthritis, had less mobility of his hands. And he never made a gazillion dollars, but he took what he made and multiplied it. He literally took the scripture, a man should leave an inheritance to his children's children to heart, because with what he made, he purchased Roth IRAs, he purchased stock, he did investments. And he literally was also a very organized bookkeeper. Like all his things were alphabetized, filed into a notebook, no confusion. But he didn't just leave that information stacked away. He took the information for the things he left me and he made copies. And then one Christmas, when he thought I was old enough, he brought me up to his room and he said, look, baby girl, I have left this for you. And he gave me the papers that had the account numbers, the companies, the actual assets. And I cannot tell you how valuable that was, because he died 10 years later. But again, my aunt, who was left to be the executor of his estate, was grieving the loss of her father and also trying to navigate estate planning. And she had never done that before. She had to take her time to go through the process of getting to all the people. But I didn't have to wait on her because I had my paperwork. I knew who to contact. All I needed was a death certificate. So I went to her and I said, Auntie, can I please have a death certificate so I can claim what Grandpa left me? And she was so relieved because she had one less thing she had to do.
That is a beautiful story about legacy, for real. And it just drives in your point that you said before. If you just tell your people what you have for them, what you're leaving for them, where to find all the information. If you just so happen to pass away, things could go so much smoother.
Oh, and you know what else was the icing on the cake? The last 3 years of my grandfather's life, he had dementia. So can you imagine if he didn't tell me 10 years prior that he had this stuff for me, that in those last 3 years, he would never have had the ability to tell me, because we talked about the weather and music most of those years, because he unfortunately couldn't remember a lot of things. So that's why I emphasize, like, don't wait until you think that it's the best time, because you don't know when it's going to be your last time. And definitely not when you know that your family is mature enough and responsible enough to know.
See there? And you just never know what life will bring you. You just never know what'll happen. You can get the policy and 30 days later, it could be your time. You know what I'm saying? So I definitely agree with you there. Now, if you're listening and you're ready to start thinking about your legacy, I do have a legacy letter generator in the resource vault, but that's only available if you pre-order the book, Money Moves and Mindset Shifts. So if you go to moneytalkwitht.com/moves, you'll be able to get that information. But I do want to ask you one last question, Aquania.
Go for it.
What is the biggest myth people believe about life insurance that keeps them from getting adequate coverage?
The biggest myth is that people think you only need to worry about it if you're going to die, right? Like, or, you know, when you're going to die, when you've accomplished all these other things first. They assume that it needs to be purchased after you have the car, the house, the college fund, and all the things that you want to leave your kids, because those things seem more tangible, right? Like, I purchased a big old house and they know they're going to inherit this. So now I need to get my will together, and now I need to get my affairs in order. And a lot of people think that they'll have time to apply later, to pay for it later, to do it later. And life insurance, above all those other assets that you can have, is the one that gets more expensive the longer you wait. Life insurance is also not guaranteed, because if your health gets worse, deteriorates, or drastically changes suddenly from an accident, a sickness, or an illness, or a diagnosis, you may suddenly become uninsurable. So to think that you can wait until a certain age and then worry about it is just not the best move. And then the second thing I would say is, in addition to that, do not rely on your work's life insurance policy to be your legacy plan. And the reason I say that is because your job is not responsible for providing for your family after you're gone. That's your job, right? You're working and your paycheck provides for them. But your job may offer only a small policy, maybe 1 year of your salary. But when I'm working with clients, we aspire to do, up to 5 to 10 years of your annual salary, so they can survive 5 to 10 years after your death. So a lot of times people think I'm good because I have my work policy, but they may actually be limiting themselves to only what they earn in 1 year. Or you're depending on a job who is always going to look at their bottom line first to provide for your family. And I have had clients who literally, they have called me and said, oh my God, my job just eliminated the life insurance benefit and I don't have any life insurance. And now I'm 40, 50, or 60 years old and I'm trying to get coverage because I thought I would have this to take care of my family. So those are the two biggest things, is thinking they can apply later and be covered, or depending on their job's insurance is enough. When I tell people all the time, get your own policy so you can leave your job whenever you want to and not be concerned about the benefit being in place or not being in place as an employee.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I knew you would have some good ones. See? But thank you so much, Aquania, for coming on the show today. Now, if people were interested in finding out more about you or getting their legacy together, how could they find you?
You can check me out, guys, at thepurposeofmoney.com. That's my website, thepurposeofmoney.com. And I'm always hanging out on Instagram at thepurposeofmoney. If you want to check me out there, I have tons of free content. And on my website, I even have a financial freedom quiz so we can check in and see where are you financially and whether or not you have all the things that you need.
Yes. And I will make sure that I link to all of Aquania's resources in the show notes. So definitely check that out. I'll also make sure to link to episode 18, where we went more into the basics of life insurance. So you can check that out as well. So thank you so much, Aquania, for being a great friend, a great insurance agent, and just the overall good person. I appreciate you coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Bye.
Thank you for listening, joining, and being a part of the Money Talk with Tiff podcast this week. You can check Tiff out every Thursday for a new Money Talk podcast. But if you just can't wait until next week, you can listen to previous podcast episodes at moneytalkwitht.com or follow Tiff on all social media platforms at Money Talk with T. Until next time, spend wise by spending less than you make. A word to the money wise is always sufficient.
Too many tools, too much stress, and way too many bills.
Odoo replaces it all. One connected platform for every part of your business, so you can work faster, smarter, and for less. Odoo, the only software you'll ever need. Try it free today at odoo.com. That's ODOO.com.